Alright, what makes a character broken? You might immediately be thinking of their damage, right? You know, when you see an Acheron dropping 1,000,000 damage, that's definitely crazy. But what it really comes down to is synergy. That Acheron isn't going to be doing 1,000,000 damage consistently without the buffs or debuffs that her best supports provide her. You might now immediately be typing a comment saying that's normal. If you gigabuff a unit, then obviously they're going to deal a lot of damage. But what I'm mostly referring to is how well each unit works with their supports. If you take the exact supports that Acheron used, let's say a Fujuan for crit and sustain, Pella for Death Shred, and Jiaoqiu for vulnerability, and then you give those supports to someone else in her hypercarry niche, they're still going to do decent damage, but it just won't be as good because they're not designed to work with the debuffs those units offer as well as Acheron is. You can look across the game for different examples of this. Firefly takes a huge damage cut when she doesn't have the break efficiency Ranmei provides. Follow-up units like Dr. Ratio, Topaz, and now Fei Zhao aren't nearly as strong without Robin giving them her extra damage procs and damage boost through her skill and talent. But again, when you take those same supports and you swap them around to other types of damage units, they just don't get nearly as much value. This does create a weird conundrum where, in their niches, these support characters are crazy strong and universal across them, but outside of it, they kind of fall off a bit. It also creates a situation where niches that don't have super synergistic units just end up weaker than others. Think about it, right? Sparkle is the newest premier hypercarry support, and if we take one of the stronger classical hypercarry units such as Jingliu, Sparkle's 50% action advance and extra skill points just don't work as well with her as Bronya's 100% action advance and damage boost does. And to be clear, Bronya isn't exactly fully synergistic either because her buffs wear off due to Jingliu's personal action advance. The result of this is that units like Jingliu have just fallen off because they don't have units that work super well with them. Another thing to look at is how Dot doesn't really have its super synergistic support yet, causing it to definitely be a bit weaker compared to other damage niches. While Ranmei works with Dot units and Robin sorta does, not having a unit that fully works with them makes the difference for them being usable versus being strong. Honestly, in my opinion, this is a result of Hoyo making the vast majority of supports too universal. Realistically, does Robin's skill need to globally buff damage instead of just increasing the damage of follow-ups? Does Ranmei need to give Res Pen to the entire team when her ult is active, on top of her already giving damage bonus and break efficiency just from her skill? It feels like these units are releasing with fully completed kits, but on top of that, they then have even more things that they can do. I'd also say that it limits the unit diversity in the game that players have to choose from. When you have units that can do it all, why would you use a unit that can only do a specific thing? A lot of the design decisions in this game feel like they come from a place of making every support more useful than the last, but that's at the detriment of everything that came before it. There's a few things that come about as a result of this. For one, it basically makes 4-star units incomparably weaker and not nearly as useful as the other options. Why would you use Asta when you can use Ranmei? Why would you use Yukong when Sparkle exists? There's definitely some exceptions like a Windset Pella or a Tingyun with a Dance 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 Light Cone, but those usually require high investment or luck with a gacha to fully perform compared to others. Second, because Hoyo is allocating a part of these units' power budget towards universal things like damage percent or attack or whatever, it basically means some damaged niches aren't necessarily going to ever get that truly synergistic support that works with them. If Hoyo is more willing to lock supports to niches, then that would allow more diversity across the support role. For example, if Robin's entire kit only buffed follow-ups instead of just generally buffing damage, she'd still be used elsewhere because of her action advance, but it would heavily incentivize people to only get her if they want to invest in that playstyle, rather than her being a general use unit that also just so happens to buff follow-ups. Lastly, the lack of specific supports for niches or even characters leaves some damage niches in the dust compared to others until they get that unit. An E0 S0 Acheron, for example, running Pella and Gwynaifen will do okay, but until Jiaoqiu was released, it was difficult to consistently get her ult off, thus making her a somewhat frustrating unit to actually use. While it only took a couple patches for Acheron to actually get her special unit, other units like the ones in the Dot niche haven't gotten their support yet, and Dot's been a playstyle since 1.2. Something else that I think is worth mentioning is that while the supports are pretty universal, the way the DPS are designed definitely plays a part into how broken they are. As I mentioned right at the beginning of this video, synergy is what makes them broken, and that's a two-way street. You might think that Robin is busted because she triggers a lot of extra hits from follow-ups, but she wouldn't be getting those extra hits without a character like Fei Zhao or Topaz doing it so often. Again, this is why it's really a bit weird that these units have such bloated kits. They already do a lot in their niches, so them having a bunch of buffs that characters outside of their niche can also use results them going from strong to broken. In the future, a route that I could see Hoyo going down is giving the 4 stars those hyper niche roles. When the game launched, there was inklings of this, with how Pella reduces ice resistance when you have her E4, or Asta increases fire damage with her A4 trace. It's honestly a bit of a shame that not only have we not gotten niche-specific supports, we also haven't really gotten real elemental supports either. I guess when you have someone globally boosting damage by 50% like Robin, the 18% fire damage bonus from Asta doesn't really mean that much. As an add-on to that, another thing Hoyo could do is create artifact sets that are tailored towards boosting specific types of damage. If your favorite unit is Asta, right now there's just not a reason to really ever use her. But if she had a tailored set, not only would she have her regular kit, but she would also have a set built to boost fire damage. Considering she already has parts of her kit built towards that niche like the A4 trace I mentioned earlier, it wouldn't really take a huge boost from the artifact set to make her one of the more competitive units if you wanted to build a fire-specific team. For example, in a Himiko Super Break team, instead of just slotting in her on Mei, you would actually have an incentive to potentially use that favorite unit over her and then run a hybrid break damage team instead. That said, honestly, I don't really know if there's a real solution to all this, because even if there were unique sets like that, realistically a 4-star is definitely going to get overshadowed by the 5-star options regardless, and that's not even considering that they could probably just make use of those sets themselves. Alongside that, at the end of the day, Hoyo just has a monetary incentive to continue to make these units have bloated kits. Eventually, maybe they will add a character that only buffs follow-ups, but that character is going to have to buff them more than Robin already does, or do more than a sub-DPS like Moze or Topaz do to take their slots. Maybe Dot will get a unit that can extend the duration of the dots, or have the ability to pull enemy units forward to trigger those dots or something like that. For now though, I guess it's just something we have to live with. I will say it definitely does have some upsides. I've mentioned before in other videos that when units are more universal within their niche, it's really nice for players as they can just roll for those few supports and then use them pretty much everywhere. I just wish that the options we had were more diverse between each other, rather than support A, B, and C all having a damage boost, with the only real difference being the other, smaller parts of their kit. What do you think? Would you like to see more specific units and artifact sets, or do you like the fact that we have these universal buffers? Feel free to let me know down in the comments below. Anyway, that's my rant. If you haven't already, subscribe, and maybe give my other videos a shot too.